This podcast is presented by 19 Crimes Snoop Dogg Cali Red, California Red Wine, now available at Trader Joe's for under $12. I'm drinking it right now. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. It's the Boris Dirk podcast. Welcome back. It's Max here. I've got Drew with me. Drew, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing lo-fi voice Drew tonight. Got my roommate sleeping in the other room. And I'm pumped about these segments. We got some fun stuff coming today.
Yes. Often this podcast is very heady, lots of, thought out analytical takes. Today is much more of a gut podcast. We're starting with some vibe power rankings, just who has the best vibes in the league. And then we're going to go to talking about who has the highest ceiling, who are some of the contenders. But we're going to start by picking the 5 teams that we think have the best vibes. So you could think about this in a lot of different ways. I feel like vibes come from exceeding expectations. So it's kind of the combination of exceeding expectations and hope for the future. That was my definition of vibes. Drew, I don't know if yours was different.
Yeah. And I'm taking credit for this segment because I just think it's really interesting the way NBA discourse works. The Celtics should be number 1 on everyone's vibe rankings, right? Because they're 14-4 and they've looked like the best team in the league through 18 games. But not really to me, because this is where they're supposed to be. They might have been the consensus pick in the East this year. They've had a couple disappointing playoff exits in a row. And I feel like a lot of Celtics fans and NBA fans are waiting to see what the Celtics do in the playoffs. And, the Celtics could win 57 games this year, and I'm still going to be kind of wait and see on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the climb, as Miley once said. And sometimes the come up is the most joyous period of an NBA team's progression. Let's get into the best vibes in the league. The teams that feel like the energy is just the most electric in the locker room right now.
All right. Can I say my first team?
Yeah.
This team, I think, is the perfect combination of exceeding expectations and being on the ascent. So it is just purely house money. And that's the Orlando Magic. I think they have the best vibes in the entire NBA. They're super young. They're missing 2 starters in Markelle Fultz and Wendell Carter Jr. and just went on a 9-game win streak. They're starting a rookie Anthony Black at point guard, a third-year player Jalen Suggs at shooting guard, Franz Wagner is 21, Paolo Banchero, who's in his second year, and Goga, who's very young as well. Wendell Carter's not super old either, who's the normal guy holding down that spot. And, coming into this year, everyone was looking at them as, ooh, this team could really push for the play-in. Like, Indiana, they might get mentioned later, but Indiana, Orlando, Atlanta, a lot of these teams can kind of be in the play-in mix. And Orlando's just been like, screw all that. We're the best defensive team in the league, which to this point they have been, or at least they're top 3, if not the best. And they're just big. They're athletic. They've got 2 guys who are future all-stars in Paolo and Franz, and Jalen Suggs just playing literally out of his mind, like a crazy person every single night. And they've become one of the most fun teams to watch in the league. And it is the absolute sweet spot of where you want to be as a fan, where you don't have to deal with the burden of any disappointment yet. It is just pure hope and upside.
Yep. And lineups with Suggs, Franz, and Paolo are forcing the most turnovers in the league right now. So they're super fun to watch from like a league pass perspective. They're constantly in transition, getting buckets, because half court offense is not what this team is built for right now. And even Paolo, as an okay defender who hopefully will become good in time, he's getting a lot of steals, like pushing pace for them. And in half court, like Paolo's shown me way more with his back to the basket than I thought he even had in his bag yet. Awesome passing from him. The scoring is coming with time. His shooting touch looks a little bit better this year. I love the Magic, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Fultz when he comes back because I think he's about to miss his 10th game. Anthony Black has been getting a couple minutes here and there, but actually shockingly few for number 6 pick that we thought was kind of ready to go. They've gotten some awesome stuff from Cole Anthony, and it's just like every you go on cleaning the glass and you chop up Magic lineups. It seems like every 5-player iteration has a well above average defensive rating. So yeah, it's an exciting time for them. It feels like they are right now where the Thunder were like a week ago. I had the Magic at number 1 on my vibes rankings as well.
Yeah. And just as a quick little note, I was looking and just throw this out there. Jalen Suggs's year 3 stats look a lot like Drew Holiday's year 3 stats. And that was the comp a lot of people had for him coming out of college. And now it's a little more like, is he more of a Marcus Smart than a Drew Holiday? I think he's already having a pretty Marcus Smart-esque impact on winning with the player that he is now.
Yeah.
He's, just as a baseline, he's averaging 13 points a game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, half a block every game. And he's shooting 37% from 3, which is a career high. And it just looks better. Like he looks confident taking it. He looks comfortable. Every single night he's making some sort of high energy emotional play. Last night he recreated the Wade and LeBron transition dunk picture with Cole Anthony. And yeah, just, a thing to keep an eye on. That 2021 draft continues to be just fascinating, that especially that top 5 of Cade, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, and Jalen Suggs. Like of that, Scotty Barnes looks like he's definitely going to be a star. I still am a big believer in Cade. I think if you actually watch the Pistons play, you see that they will not be coming up on the vibe rankings. But if you watch the
Yeah.
Pistons play, Cade makes good decisions. I think he's just in a horrible situation. But Suggs, he has had a real roller coaster of a career in his first 3 years and is really settling in. And I think still has a lot of room to grow as a playmaker and scorer as well.
Yeah. And I think that they're a good kind of case study for vibes rankings versus like actual NBA power rankings, because as much as I love what the Magic have brewing, I don't think that they're a dangerous playoff team yet. They're
No.
13-5. They're the 2 seed tonight, which is fucking awesome. But and let's say they hold on to a top 6 seed. I still don't. I think they're too young. I don't think they have the shooting. I think when the game slows down, they're just not ready.
Yeah.
That's not a knock. That's just they need time. It's early, and that's why I love having them at the top of the vibes rankings right now. Like snapshot this on December 1st. It's just been a beautiful Magic experience. And yeah, Jalen Suggs is a dude. And I would still rather have Scotty Barnes today, which I was wrong about in that draft. Like I thought Suggs was the right pick for them. And I was super excited that he fell to them. But he is carving out a role. And I think he's better than Marcus Smart. Like I think he is going to be a better decision maker in time. Like the smart drawbacks, I think, will be less of an issue with Suggs.
Yeah. Derek White.
I believe in his shot. I think his shot is really going to come, and it's been coming recently.
Yeah, Derek White may potentially be a better comparison than Marcus Smart, but even then, I think he has a little bit more shot creation upside. Anyways, give me a second team.
All right. Well, as a Timberwolves hater, I can't run from the grind. I have to be brave. They're number 2 on my vibes rankings right now. And this is one of those boring ones where like, a really impressive record is the main reason. But I also think it's not going to get much better than this for Minnesota. Ant looks like he's taking the step. I'm still taking Halliburton over Ant. I don't know why I feel a need to throw that in here, but it's true. Ant's defense is like been the biggest leap, I think, this year. When I watch the Wolves, I'm like, wow, with his big body, he can actually guard most 4s, and 1 through 3 are now no issue for him. McDaniels has been doing McDaniels type things on defense. And even after a really cold cat shooting start, like the Wolves have just been stacking wins behind an elite defense. And an offense that runs on Ant's energy and Ant's clutchness down the stretch.
Yep.
It's impossible to ignore that things are extremely positive right now in Minnesota. I do not expect them to stay this way.
Yes, we haven't talked about Minnesota much on the pod yet this season. Both of us were pretty low on them going into the year. I had them missing the playoffs. I can't remember if you had them missing the playoffs as well. Um,
I did.
they look great, and on top of that, per ESPN, they've played the fourth hardest schedule in the league thus far, and they're still number one in the West, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
I I do think they're a little bit more of a regular season juggernaut than a playoff juggernaut. You know, we've seen Rudy have his problems in the playoffs, Rudy Gobert as a anchor when teams really can stretch them out. But the formula of Rudy Gobert is one of the best paint protectors in the league. Jaden McDaniels is one of the best perimeter defenders, lockdown guys in the league. Anthony Edwards as at least on the ball, another one of those best lockdown guys when he's really locked in. Like, and then Mike Conley, who's just a really steadying force. In the preseason, I talked about how Utah would really miss Mike Conley this year, and that's
Yeah.
definitely borne out. Like, you know, Keontae George looks pretty good, but their guard play really is lacking compared to what they've had with Mike Conley in the past.
Yeah.
And yeah, Cat always gives me pause with this team. Like, he's looked good recently. He's in the top 5 in post efficiency, but when you get to the playoffs and you're relying on Cat and Rudy,
Yeah.
it gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but it's impossible to deny how impressive they've been so far. The only thing dragging down their vibes is just the amount of money that they have dedicated to two guys who played the same position in Cat and Rudy. Minnesota fans aren't going to want to hear that. I don't know if we have any Minnesota fans that listen to the podcast, but they're not going to want to hear that. But at
Yeah.
the same time, they've completely exceeded expectations to this point, and you have to give them all the credit because their defense is very legit. Like in that game against the Thunder the other night, they really clamped them in the second half where the Thunder just couldn't get any easy shots. Like they're your two best perimeter players are going to have to work really hard to score on Ant and McDaniels, and then the paint is just kind of a no-fly zone with Rudy in there unless you can really stretch him out. So yeah, they made an appearance on my list as well. Can I give
Yeah.
another team?
Yeah. Last thing I just want to add on Minnesota though is the concern I'd have about them long term is just like I think you just touched on it with the Magic. Some of the depth stuff I think has really helped them early. Like they've been getting awesome minutes from Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, even Nikhil Alexander Walker's in a couple of their most successful 5-man lineups. And because they are so locked into the current setup, the way they've paid Towns and they're locked into the Gobert money, their core 5 of Conley, Ant, McDaniels, Towns, and Gobert is only plus 4.4 per 100 possessions. And that's surprising for a team that's 14-4. And that lineup has played a lot of minutes. They've been pretty healthy. It just, so some of those bench stars that they have, those awesome role guys are helping their regular season output in a way that I think is going to be less impactful down the stretch.
Every time that Towns checks in for Naz Reid, they should play Can't Believe I Let Nas Down through the in arena speakers. I can't believe I didn't mention Naz Reid, but every time I watch them, I'm just like, this guy needs a bigger role.
Yeah.
Like right now, he's basically being used like Bobby Portis in Milwaukee, and I just think he's capable of so much more than that.
Yeah.
Like his offensive skill level is so high for a big man. His ability to shoot, his ability to put the ball on the floor, like he can hit guys with
Yeah.
dribble combinations and get to the basket from the perimeter. And on defense he isn't the best, but he's not
Yeah.
a complete liability. So yeah, I still
Yeah.
think the future of this team is moving on from Towns and building around the Ant McDaniels Gobert defensive foundation and filling in around that. But it's hard to deny with how successful they've been so far this year.
I always worry about teams that have trouble putting their 5 best guys on the floor. I don't think this version of Conley is one of their five best players, but he's sort of the straw that stirs the drink, and he has the Gobert chemistry. Like, I think Kyle Anderson today is a better player than Mike Conley today. But then shooting maybe becomes an issue. It mucks things up for them. You're better defensively with Kyle Anderson than this version of Conley. It's just a little complicated.
Yep.
That's why I think this current setup for Minnesota is more conducive to regular season success. All right,
Mhm.
who do you have? Who did you have at number 3? And did you have the Wolves at 2 as well?
I actually didn't have the Wolves in my 5, but they would have been the next one. The only
Okay.
reason not is the Towns and Gobert contracts. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna go with Miami next.
Bingo.
They are kind of, it's weird for a team that's like lost in the finals or the semifinals in 3 of the past 4 years to not be one of the like, let's see what happens in the playoffs teams, like you were saying with Boston. But
Yeah.
they've just, every time they've gone in a deep run, it has been exceeding expectations. And they look better than they did last year in the regular season. And they have a rookie whom I love in Jaime Jaquez. I was watching the game today. I think Jaquez, yeah, I think he finished with over 20 points. His last 5 or 6 games, he's been like 15 plus, a lot of rebounds. He's just the ultimate like do shit guy. Cut to the basket for a layup, sure. Spot up three, yes. Cook someone in the post, absolutely. That's like his favorite thing to do. Great rebounder, solid defender, just extremely intelligent. And they're already like giving it to him in crunch time. Like against the Bucks, they were running plays for him to post up guys down the stretch. It's for like their clutch time offense when Jimmy was out. And I thought it would be a perfect fit for him in Miami. And it's been even better than I could have imagined. Like he is just the absolute epitome of a Miami Heat player. Um, and I thought he was going to be like a really good role player. Like some of my comparisons for him coming out were, I thought he had some Kyle Anderson to him, some Dante DiVincenzo. One of the ones I liked actually was a little bit of Austin Reeves because I think he does have that kind of on the ball mid range juice with some like playmaking too, and that kind of herky jerky style. But he's a really unique player, and Jimmy Butler's an absolutely perfect mentor for him.
Yeah, he has more Jimmy Butler than I was ready to admit pre-draft. Like,
Mm,
uh, I mean, and I'm sad for you that you didn't just suck it up and bite a pillow and put Jaime in your top 10 or
I
something
want.
wild like that. But it doesn't matter. We have plenty of audio recorded of you waxing lyrical about his game. So it is what it is. And we also said this on draft night, and we weren't alone. That like as soon as he went to Miami, you just knew. You just knew that he was going to help them win important games. If the Hornets had picked him, I think they weren't even that far from his range. Like there's just no way. He probably becomes a PJ Tucker sort of like trade deadline uh, favorite type guy who we can't really understand his value. But in Miami, they're kind of letting him roam on offense. They're letting him play with his back to the basket in ways rookies his size are not usually allowed to do because Spolstra has maybe the most creative staff in the league. And they're doing everything right. Like you said, the Jimmy Butler Academy of undersized mid post creators is just exactly where Jaime needs to be. And yeah, I think the Heat are not we're going to talk contenders in a little bit, and the Heat are not one of the sort of like dark horse contenders that I'm going to ride for in this episode. However, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they make another run. Because not getting Dame, not getting Beal, like all the things that didn't happen for them have left them with a group that looks as gritty as the one that made it all the way last year to the end.
Yep. As an additional note on the Heat, Bam is averaging a career high in scoring. He's averaging 23 points a game. His previous career high was last year at 20. Also averaging a career high in rebounds per game. His assists are the highest in the past 4 years. His defensive impact is as good as ever. He is one of the, they lost the game to Milwaukee the other night, but down the stretch, Bam like switched on to Dame 3 feet beyond the 3-point line and just like, slid his feet a few times both ways, then shadowed him on a drive and blocked his shot into the second row. And I don't know if there's a lot of people say they guard 1 to 5, and there's a lot of people being touted as guarding 1 to 5. And, a lot of them are like, 1 to 5, sure, if the 5 is like, not to pick on anyone, but Mitchell Robinson is someone I love, or Derek Lively, someone who's not going to pose like a huge threat in the post. There are very few guys in the league who can truly guard everyone from Damian Lillard to Joel Embiid, and Bam is one of those guys.
Yeah.
He might be the only one, honestly. And yeah, he looks better than he ever has.
Yeah.
And you combine that with them like being a deeper team, I think, than they were last year, and Jimmy's going to turn it on eventually. Like
It's
their
just
their
it's
vibes are
just
always
tough
good.
though. It's tough though because as good as the vibes are, there's been so much Kyle Lowry recently, and he's 38 and he's been playing really well for them. He's actually been their point guard. And Kyle Lowry on his best night, like when he's at that age now where like a couple times a week he looks like himself, and then a couple times a week he looks like he's working with flat tires. Um, but he might be a better point guard for them than Tyler Harrow. I mean, recent results definitely seem that way. But can this team really go all the way playing Duncan Robinson, Haywood Highsmith, and Jaime as a rookie, significant minutes this way? There's just been so much Lowry. There's been so much Josh Richardson. Jay Rich back in Miami has also been balling for them, but it's just like, is Josh Richardson this year's Caleb Martin? I don't know, but all bets are off because this lineup of Lowry, Robinson, Haywood, Highsmith, Jimmy, and Bam is one of the best defensive lineups in the league through 18 games. I just don't know what to say anymore. I'm in love with Cleveland. I'll shoot my shot now. Cleveland's the team that I'm gonna be vouching for in a bit. But Miami can beat anyone.
Yeah.
They're too tough.
All right, give me a fourth team.
Um, okay. Number 4, I want to beat you there. We're going to the Bayou. I got the New Orleans Pelicans.
Ooh, I didn't have him in my top 5 vibes, but I'm going to talk about him later.
Yeah, so maybe we do that now.
Yeah.
Your call, but I thought about calling the Pelicans my dark horse contender. I didn't do it, but I think it's impossible to understate the importance of taking guys like Dyson Daniels and Herb into must win situations, and like they have the wings for the playoffs. Um, the fact that they're what 10-9 now, I think.
I think better.
Yeah, 10-9 in the
Okay.
8th seed. Zion is playing sometimes, not playing others. Brandon Ingram's been awesome. But Zion hasn't been hurt yet this year, and vibes seem
Nope.
pretty good. Dyson Daniels is firmly established now as like maybe one of the best wing defenders in the league. He's on a short list of guys you want to throw at the best of the best, and so is Herb for that matter.
Herb might be at the top of that list.
They're hanging in there without CJ, who is still a really valuable regular season shot maker. Um, the thing that holds me back with the Pelicans as a contender is Valanciunas at the 5 and just their center position in general.
Yep.
Because Zion's rebounding is way down.
Yep.
He looks like the second best player on this team most nights. And he just doesn't carry the same on-ball burden that BI has taken on at this point. Probably because the Pelicans just trust BI's durability a little bit more. But I just now am starting to think about the Raptors parting ways with Valanciunas in 2019, saying we need Marcus Gasol at the 5, can switch on to a couple more guys and has more composure down the stretch. Like we can't do it with Valanciunas. And I have the same worries that the Pelicans now, with Zion's defense and rebounding, they can't play 5 Zion against a lot of teams. And I don't know who their center is, because Valanciunas I don't think is a guy that you can go too far in the playoffs with.
The listeners can't see me, but I'm wistfully looking off into the distance thinking about how perfect prime Marc Gasol would be for this New Orleans Pelicans team. Um, I mentioned strength of schedule with Minnesota, who had the fourth hardest. New Orleans had the fifth hardest, and being at 10-9 is I with the injuries they've had to CJ missing a lot of time, Trey Murphy, who we both love, I think we both view as a future all-star level player who has not played yet. I believe he's making his season debut tomorrow. And
Let's do it. They need that shooting.
yes, with Murphy not having played yet, CJ having missed at least half the season, um, Jose Alvarado missed time. I mean, this team is just so deep. Like
Yeah.
they start CJ, Zion, Ingram, Herb, and Jonas, and then they bring off the bench Jose Alvarado, really good backup point guard. Dyson Daniels, talked about as one of the best defenders in the league. Herb Jones, same thing. Or I said Herb already. Trey Murphy, one of the best shooters in the league, and probably should be starting, and Herb Jones on the bench, but take it or leave it. And that's before you get to guys like Larry Nance. If he's your ninth man, like you're really in good shape. Uh Jordan Hawkins, who I loved in the draft and has just been,
He's making shots.
yeah, he's been everything that, you would expect him to be in the pros. I think his 3-point percentage is, going to go up as he gets more comfortable, adjusts to the speed of the game, learns which shots to take and not to take. And as they get more shooters around him too, because right now he's the only guy who's like a 5 alarm fire. Like you got to close out on
Yeah.
him out there. But once you throw out lineups, they might not be able to guard anybody. If you throw out a lineup with CJ, Jordan Hawkins, and Trey Murphy with like Zion barreling down the middle, that is just a lot for a defense to account for. Uh, Matt Ryan's given them some good minutes as like another shooter off the bench. And it hurts my soul that they're so deep because I want to see my boy EJ Liddell get minutes, but he's just never going to
And
behind.
he should. He
Yeah.
should stop giving minutes to a Zeller brother and try things out. Again, like Herb isn't quite big enough to be a small ball five in most situations. Zion doesn't look like he's built for that, at least at this point in his career. EJ Liddell like should be getting a shot, but we don't know what's happening in practice.
Yeah. He seems to be behind even Jeremiah Robinson Earl in the rotation, which is not
Yeah,
great for the Liddell hive, but
but I just fantasize about going into a series where you're not playing Nikola Jokic, even benching CJ McCollum and playing some version of like five out, like wings galore, Ty
yeah.
Lue, Wet Dream, Herb Jones, Dyson Daniels, Slice and Dyson, Zion, BI, and then like
Trey.
pick your yeah, Trey for the shooting. And like what big in the West is really punishing you for that? I almost, if you pull the Lakers matchup, I kind of liked seeing like how AD handles that offensively. Maybe throw the Lakers out of their rhythm by making AD think he should carry the entire load for them.
I don't know how many I don't know how many rim confrontations AD and Zion will survive going up against each other. Like by the fourth or fifth attempt, someone's going to be on the ground. But
Yeah,
yeah, I did not have the Pelicans in my great vibes rankings just because I feel like the shadow of Zion and his
yeah.
health is always kind of hanging over them. But I do think they have one of the highest ceilings in the NBA if everything goes right for them.
All right. And who else did you have there?
Uh, a few other teams to mention before I pick my final one. Philly, I think, deserves a mention. They are definitely in the let's see what happens in the playoffs category, but the vibes of Tyrese Maxey are just kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
And when you have this guy who you pick, 18, 19, 20, wherever they picked him in the draft, and he just organically develops into a firm second star next to Joel Embiid when they thought like, oh, how are we going to trade for one? They look awesome. Um, and Nick Nurse is clearly a big coaching upgrade for them. Embiid's made a big playmaking jump this year. He's averaging a career high in assists, over 6 a game, which is no Nikola Jokic, but it's good for a center for sure. Um, the Thunder deserve a mention as sort of the ahead of the timeline, all sort of upside and hope. Obviously, the Josh Giddey thing has like cast a shadow over whatever's going on with them right now. Not really going to discuss that just because there's not enough information out yet. But pre that, they had among the best vibes in the league. Sacramento's had very good vibes recently as well. They're just a really fun team. I love Malik Monk. He's one of my favorite players in the whole NBA. But I'm going to say for my final team, it's obvious, but I'm going to say the Denver Nuggets. The vibes are always good when you have the best player in the league. And when they have Murray, Jokic, and Porter out there, they're just unguardable. Like I was watching it against the Rockets yesterday, and like, yeah, it's the same dilemma we saw through the playoffs last year. That you can't double Jokic because if you do, it's a Michael Porter Jr. spot up is one of the most efficient plays you can run in the NBA. Jamal Murray's super efficient, and if you play Jokic one on one, he's just gonna absolutely obliterate you. So when they have their 5-man starting lineup of those three with KCP and Aaron Gordon, and then you add in Reggie Jackson, who's kind of having a throwback season. Um, Christian Brown looks good. Peyton Watson has his moments defensively. Like they're still the best team in the league. I think they have the highest ceiling in the league, as we'll talk about later. And yeah, for a defending champion, like I don't think they have that much pressure on them, and their vibes are awesome right now.
Yes, sir. Sixers, Thunder. You kind of touched on the other teams I wanted to mention. So let's jump ahead and talk contenders.
Yes.
And not exactly and I think what we wanted to do was talk max ceilings and just maybe who we think is in the mix right now and any of the teams like outside that very top tier that we have strong feelings for.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but in the East, I have the Celtics and the Bucks locked in as like I I feel like it's them versus the field essentially. They're tier one. Despite the Celtics looking significantly better than the Bucks so far, I have them in the same tier. That's just respect to Giannis and Dame.
Yeah.
Figuring it out, giving them time, giving their coach Adrian Griffin a little bit more time to figure out how to get the best out of the new look. Um, and after that in the East, it's kind of a free for all. I have the Heat and Sixers as teams that deserve to be mentioned. We've talked about the Heat, the Sixers. I just, as much as I've loved the Maxey Embiid experience and I love DeAnthony Melton, are you really a bona fide contender if your 2 through 4 are Melton, Tobias Harris, and 38-and-a-half-year-old PJ Tucker? I just don't know.
Well, not PJ Tucker.
It will be
Nick Batum, Marcus Morris, Kelly
Kelly
Oubre.
Oubre. Yeah. Batum's the new dude in there. Still though, I just, the most important positions in the league, they are at a disadvantage. And yet I say that despite the fact that my favorite dark horse playoff run in the East right now is the Cleveland Cavaliers,
Ooh,
who
baby.
have similar questions between, at the wing position. And they're only 10-9. It's been a slow start. There've been a lot of missed games for Donovan Mitchell, and that has a lot to do with it. We're coming off a really dark experience versus the Knicks in round 1 last year, and yet I just can't quit Cleveland. We talked about not having great statistical arguments for some of our takes today. The Cavs don't have many stats yet accrued through 20 games that make you think that they are a legit contender. But this is more, I just don't think I'm ready to accept that Donovan Mitchell is a walking playoff disappointment now. Like I think Donovan Mitchell has one more sick playoff series or two in his bag.
I think he's got a lot more.
Just a couple of years ago, we thought of him as a Jamal Murray caliber gamer. And obviously I'm thinking of when those two went against each other back and forth in the bubble. It's been a couple really rough years in the postseason for Donovan Mitchell. He's due to be efficient in the playoffs again and to get hot. I love Darius Garland. Like he is, for kind of the amount I hear about him, I think is one of my favorite point guards in the league, one of my favorite players in the league. I love how selfless he is. Darius Garland will have like a random 24 points and 6 assists on a Tuesday, and you'll just kind of glaze over it because Tyrese Halliburton's somewhere dropping 45 and 14 assists in a 160 to 152 loss. But Garland has just been steadily driving that team forward, possession to possession, making sure guys get touches, saying all the right things. I love him. I feel like his turnovers aren't bad turnovers. I'm so rose-colored glasses right now with Darius Garland.
Yeah,
And I expect Mobley to get better and better as a playoff player. So Cleveland is the team that I have my heart set on right now, despite their record.
I like it. Yeah, I tweeted the other day, by the way, follow us on Twitter at Boris Dirk Pod. Live on the pod, we just picked up another follower. So the channel
Woo!
is growing aggressively and rapidly. But I tweeted, don't panic on these NBA teams. The Golden State Warriors at 8-10, the Lakers at 10-8, and the Cavs at 10-8, because they've all played very hard schedules. Golden State the hardest, Lakers fourth hardest before tonight, Cavs seventh hardest. And the Cavs have also been missing for varying periods of time different members of their starting five. So I agree. I think they're going to get a lot better. Mobley's picked it up in the last few games. His efficiency is getting better. His scoring's getting better. I'd still like to see him be a little bit more of an offensive weapon, but yeah, I like the Cavs. I didn't have them in my top 7 like ceilings when I'm thinking about the absolute best teams. I think it's Boston
Wow.
and then a gap and then Milwaukee. I think if Boston's healthy, I think they're going to make the finals, and it may be like they'd never have to play a series longer than 6 games. I think they're that good if they're healthy. Tatum's made a big leap in terms of being a post scorer. I think that's going to help them a lot in the playoffs. So it's not just, him either flailing into a bunch of limbs at the rim or taking a step back three. Like, he actually has a little bit of unpredictability and creativity to his game. And I think Kristaps just makes them kind of unguardable offensively. Now, I said if healthy, and I still don't trust Porzingis to be healthy. And I think he is like the linchpin to everything, which is a lot to put on a guy who's been hurt a lot in his career. And if he goes down, we've talked about this before, but they're just last year's team, but swapping out Robert Williams, Grant Williams, and Marcus Smart for Drew Holiday, which I'm not positive is an upgrade in the playoffs to lose that sort of depth and replace it with Drew Holiday, who offensively has been a little uneven for them. But if they're healthy with Kristaps, I think they're damn near impossible to guard. Milwaukee, I think, is definitely the second team in the East, and their ceiling's still very high. They're kind of an inverse of the team they've been the last 3 years, where, last 3 years, they're kind of a regular season juggernaut. The first 40 minutes of the game felt really secure. And then the last 6 minutes or the last 8 minutes was just like holding on for dear life. Like, please, Drew Holiday, don't take a stupid step back three when we really need a basket. Please, Giannis, don't either be afraid to get fouled or like barrel into guys and pick up an offensive foul or settle for a long jumper. Like, please, Chris Middleton, bail us out in a role that you can fill, but you're probably a little overstretched being the go-to closer. Now it's the total opposite. Like, you watch the first 40, 42 minutes of a Bucks game, you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, the offense looks good, and that's really coming along, but they just can't contain dribble penetration at all. Like, it's tough with the scheme they're running, and they have good rim protection with Lopez and Giannis, but just a perimeter triumvirate of Damian Lillard, Malik Beasley, and Chris Middleton just isn't going to keep any high level ball handler in front of them. So unless they make an upgrade, if they make an upgrade on the wing, even to someone like Royce O'Neal, I think that can do wonders for them. Names like Alex Caruso have been thrown out. I just don't think they have enough to trade for Alex Caruso, unfortunately, for them. Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy on the trade market. I don't think they have enough to get him either. They've just kind of blown all their trade load, understandably, on Drew Holiday first and then on Dame, but they just don't have any more picks to trade, really. So, but it's the reverse when you get into the clutch. and you just trust him to do the right thing. Like they did lose a clutch game to Chicago tonight, but honestly, that game they shouldn't have had a chance to win it at the end. Like they were down 7 in the last minute, I think. And Dame just like I mean, he's outscored everyone on their team in clutch time this season. He has more points than the whole rest of the team combined. Coming into the night, they led the league in clutch net rating. I don't know if that's still the case, but they were like plus 35 points per 100 possessions in the clutch, which is just insane. Dallas number 2, by the way, with Luka and Kyrie. Their vibe's also pretty good. But yeah, I'd put them second, and I do think with Kristaps, Boston can be a little rickety, but I do think Boston has looked like the best team in the league so far, them and Denver.
Yeah. Uh, Chris Middleton just hasn't been himself, and it's been a long time now. It's not a Clay level dire situation, but it's something to monitor. Again, totally agree with you. Celtics highest ceiling in the East, Bucks second highest, and I would have the Cavs third just because I'm that much of a Max Strus truther as well. Humans on average share 84% of our DNA with dogs. I think Max Strus is about 85 or 86. And that the thing is, like you mentioned, the evolution, Bucks going from strong defense to and scary clutch offense to the opposite now. Well, the Cavs have been struggling with that wing position for a while, whether it's having sacrificing offense for Isaac Okoro's wing defense. Well, now they have a stout defender in Strus. He's playable, who spreads the floor, whether he's shooting the ball or not. So I really believe in that closing five. The Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, Jared Allen. It's not a collection of perfect fits, but the talent level is so high, and the spacing that Strus now brings to their closing lineup, I think, could be the difference between what happened last year against the Knicks and a 1 or 2 playoff series run.
Yeah. All right. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on who you think either the second best contender or second highest ceiling in the West is. I think Denver's a pretty clear number 1. They have the best playoff offense in the league. They're unguardable. You're going to have to post like a over 120 offensive rating to keep up with them, which very few teams are capable of doing. I'm going back and forth on 2 teams as being like the second contender in the West. And I don't know if it's my childhood speaking to me because they've looked pretty awful at different points this season. But I think if everything's going well, the Lakers still have a really high ceiling.
God, you're so predictable.
And it might just be because LeBron's looked incredible. Because
Yeah.
he really has. Like he looks the best he's looked since the year after they won the bubble championship. Before he got hurt that year. I don't know if it's just because he's wearing number 23 again. We talked about this in the last or one of the last pods we did, but I guess if it's a ceiling discussion, like with LeBron playing like one of the 5 best players in the league and Anthony Davis at his best, they're just a hard team to beat. If we're talking realistic ceilings, I would probably put Phoenix number 2. Now I will say it's very concerning that they still haven't had KD, Booker, and Beal all together. Like I know we're not a quarter of the way through the year yet, but it's feeling very kind of Netsy, Clippersy, where it's like, oh yeah, we'll get all these guys together and we'll just figure it out. And Phoenix of all teams should know that you need reps in the regular season. Like last year, they traded for KD. He barely played for them before they got to the playoffs. And, they went out fairly meekly to the Denver Nuggets in the second round.
Yeah.
So I think Phoenix, if they can get Beal back and integrate him into the team with, 30, 40 games to go, I think their ceiling's really high. But if it's another situation where they're like scrabbling their team health together all the way till like game 60, game 70, then I'm just not going to have any faith in them.
Yeah, I don't even think if they get the experience with Beal that the Beal trade was ever the right move. I wanted them to allocate their resources toward Drew Holiday instead. I don't know who was harder to get on the trade market this past summer, but just I don't like the Beal fit. I haven't since they made it. We've talked a lot about it. Like Jokic last year was better than Booker plus Durant
Yep.
because when the playoffs come, you're putting the ball in your best player's hands almost every time down the floor. Um, both Booker and KD are better offensive engines than Bradley Beal. And Beal has always been a bad defender, or at least has been a bad defender for like a decade now. So what is the marginal gain? And DeAndre Ayton's been doing some stuff in Portland, and I'm not a Nurkic believer. So like I'm firmly on the hill that the Suns, while the ceiling's high because they've got a couple Hall of Famers, got worse this summer. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad at the Lakers take at all. Teams that we should mention, like in the mix, I mean the Mavs because they have Luka Doncic, and it seems like like you said, vibes are pretty good in Dallas. We've got Jason Kidd cursing at Tim McMahon to say nice things about his players. We've got Kyrie not being mandated to get vaccinated. We've got some Derek Lively sightings. I'd love to see more Omax prosper, but the league's too deep for guys like him. And yeah, but the team. So you said the Lakers. The Clippers are in this mix. But
Nah,
I'm not picking them. I'm just saying they should be mentioned because Kawhi has won a couple titles.
yeah,
I'm not going there.
they might not even make the playoffs.
We mentioned the Pelicans. They deserve to be mentioned because they haven't been healthy enough to let us down yet. But
Yeah, the Pelicans were next for me after Lakers and
yeah,
Phoenix. Keep going.
um, I'm not there on the Warriors because I think this Clay drop off is mostly real. I'm going with the Oklahoma City Thunder
Yeah.
as my team that might be able to skip some steps. The right chips fall. Jamal aggravates his injury for Denver. Weird things happen. I'm going with OKC. And the knock I mentioned on Minnesota earlier that like their best lineup was not quite the point differential you'd hope for. That is also the case with OKC. SGA,
Hmm.
J-Dub, Dort, Gideon, Chet, only plus 6.2 on 406 possessions, which is one of the largest samples in the league right
Can
now.
I guess who goes in when it skyrockets?
Isaiah Joe.
Yeah, it's Isaiah Joe, isn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
it?
like I don't know if that's a plus or a minus that like, they're like 8 deep in guys that are helping them win games. But what puts the Thunder over the top for me, assuming that Josh Giddey is on the team, and obviously you mentioned that earlier, we just don't know. But I'm evaluating this version of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I believe that they have the second best player in the West right now. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think that's where SGA is.
Over Luca?
It's just the two-way thing, man. Like that felt like a real moment to me when SGA picked Steph's pocket. I think for the next 5 years, sure, give me Luka because the league ebbs and flows, and like you just give Luka 4 league average guys, and you're gonna win some games. But for like this version of the Thunder and the way they move the ball and the multiple creators, different point guard depending on the night, whether it's Chad or J Dub or Giddy or SGA, like SGA is just the ideal superstar for this team. Maybe he isn't the second best player in the West, but I think he's been the second best player in the West through 20 games or so. And I just think in any single matchup that isn't Denver, the Thunder have a chance to have the best player in the series. And that's why I think they have a chance to skip steps. Now, I picked them to be the 4 seed and to beat a 5 seed Warriors team. I think that there's a higher ceiling than that. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, they're gonna be. I love the take. I don't love the Shea second best player in the West take. I would still put Jokic, Luca, and Steph above him, and then I'd put him in that sort of KD Booker class as like the next guy. I mean, the West, so many good players in the league. Like Shea 10 years ago would have been like a no doubt top 5 player, but
Yeah.
um Also, side note on the depth of the league, it's just insane how little some of these top rookies are playing. Like,
I mean, I was just watching the Clippers Warriors tonight, and like
can Kobe Brown get a minute?
Kobe Brown was one of like I think I had him in my lottery, and he can't touch the floor for them. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Taylor Hendricks not playing at all. Jarris Walker not playing at all. Amen Thompson barely touched the court, though he's been hurt. Um, Kobe Buffkin, wish he was drafted to a different team. Anyways,
Fultz has been out, and Anthony Black is averaging like 9 minutes a game.
yeah. At any rate, um, yeah, Thunder. It's going to be very matchup dependent. If they go up against a team like, well, they're probably not going to play a team like Denver in the first round. If they do, they would have, I think, limited to no chance, just because the way they're built, they can get outsized very easily. So a team like Denver can give them a lot of problems while they kick the Lakers' ass tonight. I do think in a playoff setting, a team like the Lakers could give them trouble. Minnesota, we saw, can give them trouble with their size. But if they catch a team like the Warriors or the Clippers, or the Clippers just lost to the Warriors tonight, they might not even make the playoffs. But if they catch a team which isn't super overpowering with their size, I do think they can beat anyone.
Yeah.
So
I'm just picturing the Thunder pushing the pace against D'Lo and 39-year-old LeBron and it going very well. Like
yeah,
sort of the way the Grizzlies, I mean, the Lakers have owned the Grizzlies matchup, so I shouldn't give the Grizzlies that much credit. But the way young teams like the Grizzlies, the way the fast paced Nuggets looked last year against the Lakers, like I think the Thunder have that kind of endurance and force and speed to their game. They could make the Lakers look old
yeah. God,
and slow.
the Grizzlies just like completely fell off the NBA map this
Oh
year.
yeah, we were talking vibes rankings. I mean, I also had my worst vibes in both leagues. In the East, it's the Bulls, and in the West, it's the Grizzlies.
Yeah. Like the Grizzlies, they were like the stealth contender a couple years ago, and now like they probably won't even make the play in. Like they've already fallen so far behind. Maybe they'll go on a big run when Ja comes back, but like they're it shows how quick windows close because they've quickly gone from like the Orlando OKC stage of like, you know, hope and ascension, hope springs eternal, and now they're like out of the play-in. And
For the record, I'm not willing to go there yet. I think they're a playing team. I mean, Ja's back in exactly 10 days and they're going to start winning. I'm too much of a Bane fan. I believe too much in Jaren Jackson Jr. to do everything he needs to do except rebound. So, yeah.
well, the number of easy West games will go down the minute that Ja steps on the court. Yeah, I do think the Warriors still deserve mention just because Steph is still playing at, the peak of his powers, as they say. Um, they've played the hardest schedule in the league. Draymond missed a lot. Steph missed some. Now they're dealing with Chris Paul being out. Gary Payton tore his calf, so that's not great for them. Although they did beat the Clippers tonight, and Pods actually has been playing pretty well for them, although he didn't play the game before this. But I just still think you can't totally count them out with the pedigree that they have. Not as like I don't think I think their chance to win the championship is pretty slim, but I do think they can win any individual playoff series just with their kind of supernova ability. And I'm just not counting them out yet with the hard schedule they've played and the talent that they still have, and their ability to possibly make a trade with coupling, the Chris Paul contract and Kaminga and or Moody, future picks. They can go get a real player if another team like Utah or Toronto or whoever it may be decides to blow up what they have. So I'm not going to count them out.
Yeah.
And then the Pelicans. But yeah, you want to go on the Warriors?
No, I agree. I will never try to be the guy who says it's over for the Warriors. But my money's on the Thunder over the Warriors when we're talking ancillary contenders here.
Yes, I think if that series started today, I would pick the Thunder as well. Um, and yeah, I do think if the Pelicans go into the playoffs with a healthy Zion, they can beat just about anybody in a series. I probably wouldn't pick him against Denver, but anybody else, I think they'd have a good shot against.
Yeah.
Um, Zion's getting better and better as the year goes along too. Like he started being pretty inefficient by his standards, like, only shooting 53% from the field. And then the past few games, he's been like well up over 60, 70%. He just shot, I guess the NBA fixed it to him missing one shot yesterday, but it looked like he went 11 of 11 yesterday for 30 points. Um, there's some nights where if your defense isn't locked in, he's just, you can't do anything with him.
Yeah.
And when you couple that with Ingram and the depth that they have, they're just really dangerous. So yeah,
Yeah. And I hear you on them. I think all of your mentions are important. At the end of the day, for me, the reason I'm dying on this Oklahoma City hill is they have a guy who you could argue has been the second best player in the conference thus far and is probably top three, even if you're giving Luka the benefit of the doubt. Lou Dort has shot terribly, and his minutes are on their way down. I believe Lou Dort is a slightly below average shooter, but he's a guy who hasn't lost his confidence even through cold shooting streaks. I think the shooting's going to come for him, and I hope it does because they need his defense on the floor. And we've talked ad nauseum on this podcast about Lou Dort's winning impact outside of his scoring game, which is on and off. But this is a team that, first off, the Jalen Williams has arrived. Like he's at 17, 4-4. He's taking 4 free throws a game and making 87% of them. Like that was also a huge leap. He shot 2.5 last year, and we were just hoping he'd get to the rim more and more. It's happening. And Isaiah Joe, you mentioned, is a guy who can make 5 threes in any playoff game for them now, and doesn't give a lot back on defense. So it's about Shea, but and Chet and the top level talent. It's also about guys like Isaiah Joe and Cason Wallace, who you could throw on Steph in a pinch, and he'll give you something there. The versatility in Oklahoma City is just too much for me to pass on when it comes to choosing my number one non-Denver Western team.
I love it. Yeah, I went to the Warriors Thunder game a couple of weeks ago, not the one that went to overtime, the one where the Thunder blew them out. And I think Isaiah Joe hit 6 or 7 threes in that game, and everyone in the Warriors crowd was just like, "Who is this guy?" Just
Yeah,
hitting from like 3 feet beyond the line, and I was like, "He can shoot. This guy's a sniper."
yeah.
Yeah,
But to your point about the Pelicans, the the 4-man group of Dyson, Brandon Ingram, Herb, and Zion on a little over 100 possessions so far, 20 plus 27.4. That's
wow,
the best 4-man group in the league so far. So just size, athleticism galore in New Orleans. And yeah, again, Jamal Murray gets hurt again. Something happens. The West could be wide open in a second. It's just
yes,
like the way the East ripped open last year. And suddenly the Heat were in the finals, and it was like, what just happened? That could be the West this year. Just because of what happened to Milwaukee and Boston last year, I think we have to be ready for anything.
yep. All right, that is all I got on vibes and ceilings.
Yeah. And that is all I have as well. And this has been fun. And let's do it again soon. That's the 1 a.m. coffee hitting me right now.
All right, thanks everyone. Catch you next time.